I hope everyone's as excited as I am because today we're going to learn about factoring. So when we're factoring, we're going to start out with a trinomial. So you can factor things bigger than trinomials and you can factor binomials. But we're specifically going to talk about factoring trinomials today in the form of x squared plus bx plus c, where b is the coefficient of x and c is a constant term. All right, so here we go. Method number one is going to be guess and check. So since we have x squared, we know that this is going to have to be x and x. Because we know when we multiply the first terms together, we're going to get x squared. So that part's pretty easy. However, now we need to figure out what we can multiply together to make 60. So let's think about factors of 60. 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10. So this is a lot of choices of different things that make 60, because we know that the last terms need to multiply together to make 60. So I'm just going to guess and check. So I'm going to try 3 and 20. So I put 3 and 20. Since everything's positive here, I'll just put plus signs. So then I multiply it together, and I'm going to go back and multiply it and see what I get. So x squared, the outside would be plus 20x, inside would be plus 3x, and then plus 60. So then I look, and if I combine these middle terms, I get 23, and I'm trying to get 19. So, nah, fail. That's not going to work. Okay, so let's try again. I know it's going to have to be x plus something and x plus something else. So let's try something else that might work better. I'm going to try 15 and 4. Alright, let's try this. X squared, the outside terms plus 4x, inside term plus 15x, outside term plus 60. Now if I combine the middle terms, 4x plus 15x makes 19x. Ding, 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 we have a winner. So split into two binomials, and then multiply to see if it equals your original trinomial, and it does. So you must be thinking there must be an easier way than guess and check. But before I tell you, we're going to try two. So if you think you're ready, go ahead and pause the video and try these two. If not, listen to me walk you through one more and then pause and try. So I set up my two binomials. I know it's going to be x and x. Everything's positive, so I'm going to have plus and plus. So I think about things that multiply together to make 24. So 1 and 24. And then I just start guessing. So I'm going to start with 2 and 12. Okay, x squared plus 12x plus 2x plus 24. And when I add those together, does that make 10x? It does not. So I'm going to have to try again. So I'll erase these, erase my middle terms. So what should I try next? How about 4 and 6? I tried that. That didn't work. So 4 and 6. So x squared, my outside is plus 6x. My inside is plus 4x. And then, of course, this is going to equal 24. All right. Now I add together my middle terms, and I get 10x. All right. We are correct. One more time. So factors of 12. So I'm going to try something. Let's say I'll start with 1 and 12. I have x squared, outside, inside, last. If I add those together, do I get 7x? I do not. Alright, I'm going to try 3 and 4. So let's erase these, try 3 and 4. Okay, so now, if I start this over again, My first terms are going to be x squared outside plus 4x, inside plus 3x, and last is still plus 12. Now if I add those together, does it get my 7x? Ding ding ding, I have factored correctly. There's my final answer. Alright, so now let's move on to a more organized method besides guess and check. Alright, so let's start out when we're factoring when C is positive. C says, I'm positive, yay! Alright, so when C is positive, this is how we're going to factor. We know that everything is going to have pluses here, and we said that we're going to list the factors. So we have 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Okay, now we're going to come up with what their sum is. So 1 plus 8 is 9, 2 plus 4 is 6. So you should know that the factors that you get are the factors of C. And the sum needs to equal what B. So these are factors of C, and the sum needs to equal B. So my sum needs to equal 6. So here is my answer. Much easier than guess and check. So now I'm just going to write out x plus 2, x plus 4, and you can always go back and check that that actually works. So x squared plus 4x plus 2x plus 8, that does work. So that's my final answer. So I have x plus 2, x plus 4. Alright, so here we go. Let's try one more example. So factors of 6, their sums. So which one matches? The 5 matches right there, so there's our answer. So I have x plus 2 and x plus 3. And then I can multiply it out to make sure that it actually works. Okay, so let's talk about what if b is negative. Grr, negative b. What happens then? Well, if it's going to be negative, then we know that one of these terms must somewhere be negative. Alright? Now, in fact, if it's negative and this is positive, these must both be negative. Alright, so let's think about why this is. So pause the video and see if you can figure out why these must both be negative. Alright, so hopefully you thought about that and you realize that they must both be negative because they're going to need to add together. Those factors need to add to get b, but they're going to multiply to get c. So we're going to have to multiply two negatives together to get a positive c. Alright, so we have negative 10. So I need factors of negative 10. I'm sorry, rewind. Factors of 16. Okay, so I know they need to be negative. So I could say negative 1 and negative 16, negative 2 and negative 8, or negative 4 and negative 4. Okay, so now I'm going to add the sum of those. So I know if I multiply these together, I'm going to get a positive 16, and I'm going to get their sum. So I have negative 17, negative 10, or negative 8. So then I look and I see which one of those matches, and it's the negative 10. So now I have x minus 2, x minus 8. So let's see how this is going to work out. I'm still going to have x squared. On the outside, negative 8x. Inside, negative 10x. And then I'm going to have a positive 16. So that's why they need to both be negative if that turns out positive. But b still needs to be negative. And if I combine those together, I would have what I need in here. That should have been a 2. And then when I add those together, I will have the negative 10x. Okay, now, factoring when c is negative. Okay, so we have a negative c. So here's another example. We have x squared plus 7x minus 18. So if c is negative, these signs are going to have to be different, because I need to multiply a positive times a negative to get a negative. So I must have one positive and one negative. So I'm going to think about what the factors of 18 could be. So I could have 1 and 18. I could have 2 and 9. 3 and 6. Alright, and that's all that's going to work. Now, I need something that's going to add together to make 7. So I'm going to look at these and see if there's any way that I could get 7. So I know one of them has to be positive and one has to be negative. So, is there any way I could possibly get 7 out of this? There's not. How about out of 2 and 9? Could I get a positive 7? So hopefully you realize that if I made this a negative 2, I could get 7. Okay, what about 3 and 6? Is there any way that I could have one positive and one negative and end up with 7? And that's a no. So therefore, it's going to be x plus 9, x minus 2. So again, I'm trying to find the factors of negative 18, so it's got to be a positive times a negative, and they have to have a sum of 7 of the b term. And so I list all the factors, and then I think about one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So is there any way from that I can get 7? And that is how it works. All right, now I can multiply that back out and see if I get 7x in the middle, and I will. Okay, so let's try this example. So we're trying to find factors of negative 24, and we need it to be a sum of negative 5. All right, so factors of 24. I could have 1 and 24, 2 and 12. I could have 3 and 8. I could have 4 and 6. Okay, so somehow I need these to add together to get negative 5. So 1 and 24, no way I'm ever going to get negative 5. 2 and 12, I can't get negative 5 from that. 3 and 8, what if I make this a negative 8? That will work. Okay, and 4 and 6, that's not going to work. So I could have the sum of negative 5 here because one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So x plus 3, x minus 8. And then I can multiply them back together to check whether it would get me negative 5x and turn back into this trinomial, which it will. All right. So finally, here's kind of a chart to summarize everything we talked about. So if b and c are both positive, that's going to be the easiest kind to do. If they're both positive, there's an example. The signs of the factors are both positive, and the factors look like that. Okay, the next kind we did was when b was negative, but c was positive. So it looks like this. You have a negative b, but a positive c. If that's the case, then both of your factors must be negative. So you have something that looks like that. The next one is if b and c are both negative, so it looks like this. You have two minus signs. If that's the case, then the factor with the greater absolute value is negative. So you're going to have two factors with two different signs. So one will be positive and one is negative. And since the middle term needs to end up negative, the one with the greater absolute value will have the negative sign. In this case, negative 3 has a greater absolute value, and we know we need to end up with a negative b in the middle. Now, the opposite of that is when we have a positive and a negative, and if b is positive and c is negative, it would look like this. And then the factor with the greater absolute value is positive. So you can see here we have a positive 6, and so if you took 6 and 3 and negative 3 and you added them together, you would have that positive 3. Okay, so it might seem a little complicated at first, but once we get into class and we start practicing, this is going to get a lot easier. So this is just meant to be an introduction, get some examples down, and get you to start thinking about this. All right, enjoy!